So, honest to God, it was when I was editor of the middle school paper that I decided I wanted to be a journalist.
Okay.
Okay. So, I wanted to be a photojournalist to start. And it evolved when I went to Mizzou for J School, it evolved into broadcast. I'm not sure when that transition happened or how it happened, but it evolved when I got to Mizzou. And so when I graduated, that's what I did. I started off in Terre Haute, Indiana, then Jackson, Mississippi, market after market after market till I landed in Detroit, which was such a great news town. Oh my God,
Yes.
it was perfect. And that's where I met my husband, had my son, and so I was there 10 years. And then we started moving for his job. So I stayed in the media business the entire time. And I like to think that that was back in the day when the media was the media and objective for the most part.
You mean nobody was saying we can use our alternative facts?
Yeah. If you would have told me at any point in my life that we would have channels that leaned one direction and channels that leaned another direction and channels that put information out there that wasn't accurate or that was designed to sway people or, change public sentiment, I would have said, no way.
So let me ask you this. I mean, do you recall any teachers at Crossroads of journalism or English or anything that helped inspire you to want to go into journalism?
Gene Holtzman.
Okay.
Yep. Because Gene helped us with the middle school paper and Gene was my guy. We were connected briefly on Facebook many years ago. But I haven't stayed in touch. We haven't stayed in touch.
Did you ever know Cal Fussman?
Mm-mm.
Okay, because he's a really interesting guy. He taught journalism for 1 year at Crossroads, and he has been for years doing podcasts, and he's, interviewed Mandela and Larry King
Wow.
and lots of people. And I'm going to try to get him to come to the reunion. I think he will. But okay, so you went to the J School in
Mhm.
Mizzou, and at first you were thinking print media. Is that right?
I wanted to be a photojournalist. So I
Photojournal. Oh,
wanted,
right.
yeah, I
Okay.
wanted to, which would be print. Yeah.
So photojournalism just has to be so different now with everybody. I guess it all started with Rodney King.
Yeah.
And exactly. So you said Detroit was a great market. What
Mhm.
made it so?
They just had everything going on there. It was before the city really has undergone a renaissance, but this was pre-Renaissance Detroit,
Right.
where the city was a food desert with no real public transportation, a lot of crime, a lot of drugs, a lot of the stereotypical thoughts of Detroit. The suburbs were affluent with the autumn, the big three wealth and then all the companies that supply the big three with everything. So there was such a stark transition between the city and the suburbs, and then the city and the suburbs leadership started working together, and so that in itself was really fascinating to me. But there was just everything you could want in a city you had in Detroit news wise. You had crime if you wanted, you had beautiful feature stories about
Yeah.
amazing people, and you had sports. I was there when the Red Wings won 2 Stanley Cups, and so my job was to go to the game and get fan
Yep.
reaction.
Yep.
That's a
And when the
that's a
Red Wings and
cakewalk.
Blues were in the same division.
I was there very late one night when a game went into overtime, Blues Red Wings, and I was like, well, I win either way. But the Red Wings came out on top with that one.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So what I'm hearing is that in Detroit, there's more collaboration between the city and the suburbs than St. Louis. Is that
And
correct?
I couldn't tell you what's going on in St. Louis these days.
Well, there are like 95 different municipalities in St. Louis County, and some of them don't talk to one another, and then the city becomes an afterthought. Um, but I want to get back to Crossroads, if you don't mind. If
Mhm.
there are other teachers you might remember, classes, field trips, unique activities, whatever, that if they didn't lead you directly to journalism, they helped interest your mind in being creative, curious, analytical?
I mean, I would say that's probably what Crossroads gave me is nurturing my curiosity. You can't be in journalism without asking questions and wondering why and wondering how and trying to follow a process. So I had always been a curious kid, but I will say in Catholic grade school, it was kind of frowned upon to be curious. In fact, I remember going to Crossroads like for a day before I applied, and it was maybe part of the application,
Right,
spending
right.
a day there. And I remember seeing different books. There was like a wire rack with different books that kids could
Yep.
read. And I mentioned one of those books to um, my teacher at Crossroads, and she looked at me, or at Resurrection, and she looked at me like, children shouldn't be reading those books.
Oh my God, that is classic.
I had
Okay.
a lot of nuns as teachers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so I feel like Crossroads really confirmed that it's okay to be curious. In fact, you should be curious, or Ted Lasso would agree as well. So I have just always been that way, and I felt like that was welcome. Questioning things wasn't defying anyone. It was just being human, and it was good to ask questions.
Yeah.
So, one of the I remember the trip to Chicago, which made me want to fall in love with Chicago and convince myself that's where I was going to ultimately live.
Right.
I never did, sadly. I have family there, and my son is interested in moving there too. So I'll live vicariously through them. But and the trip to New York, that was great. The urban studies field trip where we slept on the famous bar parking garage,
Yep.
went
Yep.
and explored around the riverfront and all of that.
Yep.
That is so memorable to me. It was like a real life excursion, but it was real. It wasn't in a book. It wasn't your traditional learn about an urban area, learn about a city, learn how things work. It was experiencing that for yourself. So that was absolutely one of my favorites.
You know what I remember from that one? We had a pea pot, and it was like a painter's cardboard bucket, and we were up at the top. You know where I'm going with this? Why don't you finish it?
Well, no, I was there something, I don't remember was there a
Oh,
dramatic
okay, so what
story?
happened was that we didn't calculate that urine is acidic and acid, and it would burn its way through the bottom of that
I don't remember
cardboard
that.
pail. And when it did, then you have everybody's collective pee going down the ramp of the garage.
Around and around and around.
Right. And then there was the one. Did you ever go to one on top of the Mansion House building?
Mm-mm.
Okay, because we had one there, and we're all alone, and Carol had her camera stolen. Now, how could that happen? How could somebody, come to the roof and take it? But anyway, those were fun things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, do you remember when you did some work for Marianne Simmons?
I do. And I reconnected with her years ago on Facebook, and she's like, "Oh, that's so long ago. I barely remember." I still have a couple of copies of the Waiting Room magazine,
You
which is
remember
what she put.
that?
Oh, I remember vividly. Heck yeah.
Well,
I mean, that was my path. That was going towards, reporting
did you
and
tell her that?
storytelling. Yeah, yeah.
Good. I mean, I follow her and communicate, sometimes, and I was thrilled when Ted made it in the Hall of Fame. And by the way, they're from Detroit. Um,
Well, I was going to tell you, funny thing.
yeah.
I worked for WXYZ, which was literally maybe a mile from Ted Simmons Field at the high school
Oh,
there in Southfield, Michigan. And then, I was flying out of Detroit one time, and I sat next to a man who ended up being Ted's cousin. At the time, he was having some health problems, so he was sharing that he was having a difficult time. But yeah, the one day I happened across Ted Simmons Field, I said, "This is fate,"
oh, that is awesome.
because he
That is
was also my favorite player as a kid.
Yeah, well, mine too. And one of the reasons for me was, yeah, back then, right. So, I want to go in a little different direction now. Okay. And you kind of directed us there. And that is, talking about journalism being different now. And, either we don't care that much about facts, or we aren't that clear upon what they are. And so, you know, what are your thoughts about, the direction we're going in? Can we steer the ship back in a way in which we have more real credibility?
I don't know. I still think there's a lot of credibility at a local level. And
Okay.
I always tell people, the two things. First of all, especially like in a market the size of Richmond, Virginia, it's a
Hmm.
medium-sized market. It's
Hmm.
kind of a starting ground for a lot of kids. Um, most reporters and most people involved in news at a local level are not plotting like how can we spin this in this direction or that. They're just out there trying to report on what's happening in the community. At a national level, it's just a hot mess. I don't know how you corral it. And I think part of the problem is social media. And I don't want to say social media is a problem, but because information is spread so rampantly on social media, I almost feel like the media goes with that. Like that's what's out there. We're reporting what's out there. Now we probably know it's not accurate, but I don't know how you fix it. It's bizarre. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it is so strange to me that's the media.
Yeah, and it just happened so quickly. I was talking with a fella um, who went to Crossroads when we were just in middle school on Lindell.
From
Jim
Lindell, yeah.
Igo is his name, Jim Igo, and he drifted around for a number of years, and wound up though getting his PhD in anthropology, and right now he is the head of the anthropology department at UVA. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, and kind of looking at it through his anthropological lens, I mean, he just sees that what happened in 2016 just changed the whole way we look at the world. And I wonder if you being right on the cutting edge of information flow from authority to masses, do you see it that way?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I just feel like it's getting worse instead of being reined in or getting to a plateau. I just feel like things keep amping up. Um, I, I'm I don't even know what to say, Arthur. Like it's just it's so against everything I learned as a reporter
Yeah.
about you put the facts out there. I covered the trial of the gentleman who ran over the protesters in Charlottesville,
Yep.
and even covering that was strange because we had reporters who would listen what was said in court, and it's perfectly fine to report what was said in court, but then they would hint at things, and I don't even know how to describe they did it. I'm thinking of someone in particular, hinted things that were leaning in favor of the defendant, even though clearly he did what he did. There's video of what
Right.
he did. And so it was just strange. I had David Duke retweeted me. I was like, whoa, I don't want any part of that.
What do
I
you
mean,
mean?
so that was pretty remarkable. I learned government. I really enjoyed it. In a way, it's sort of a carryover from news. News is helping people. And whether it's helping somebody who's doesn't have heat because their landlord's terrible, or helping someone learn what's going on in their community. Government PR or communications is the same thing. We're trying to share with people what's going on in their community and get their feedback and make them a part of the process. So it's kind of an easy transfer.